In the quiet town of Willow Creek, upstate New York, the air buzzed with anticipation at the start of spring 1984. Our modest community, surrounded by rolling hills and dotted with family owned diners and hardware stores, was not known for producing stars. However, Ryan Foster, my childhood friend, was an exception. Fostered by my family since he was 5, Ryan had grown from a scrawny kid in hand me downs to a brilliant young man with a mind sharper than anyone I'd ever known. His knack for mathematics and fixing anything mechanical made him the pride of Willow Creek Community College, where my father, Dean Harper, served as administrator. This year, Global Scholars Inc., a prestigious international program, selected Ryan for a fully funded study abroad opportunity in London, a chance to transform his life and escape the small town grind. Ryan wasn't just a foster brother to me, he was a constant presence in our home on Maple Street, where my parents, Dean and Linda Harper, treated him like their son. My father, a man of integrity with a salt and pepper beard, saw Ryan's potential early on. Born to a struggling family in a rural trailer park, Ryan had been abandoned by his parents, who vanished after a whirlwind romance, leaving him to fend for himself in a crumbling shack. My father, remembering a promise to Ryan's late grandfather, brought him to Willow Creek to give him a better life. We enrolled him in the best prep courses, bought him crisp button-downs, and ensured he never went hungry. By 18, Ryan could recite physics formulas as easily as others hummed pop songs, and his name topped every academic leaderboard in the county. I, Emily Harper, watched him with admiration and quiet longing. As the daughter of the college's administrator, I lived comfortably, never wanting for much. But Ryan's drive, born from his hardscrabble roots, captivated me. I'd catch myself staring when he'd tinker with a broken radio in our garage, his brow furrowed in concentration. I foolishly believed that our shared childhood building forts in the backyard, sneaking cookies from Mom's jar, meant we were destined for more. Yet Ryan's heart belonged to Lauren Carter, a local girl who worked at the college's cafeteria. Lauren was no ordinary girl. Raised in a cramped apartment above a laundromat, she'd grown up watching her mother scrape by on minimum wage while her deadbeat brother, Patrick Carter, drifted from one get-rich-quick scheme to another. Lauren's sharp eyes and quick smile masked a burning envy of anyone who seemed poised to rise above Willow Creek's limits. She saw Ryan's selection by global scholars as a threat, a ticket that would carry him far from her and the life she dreamed of controlling. To her, Ryan wasn't just a boyfriend. He was a status ladder, a way to escape the poverty that clung to her like damp laundry. The night before Ryan's big interview with global scholars, the town held a spring festival at the college quad. Lanterns glowed, and the scent of fried dough filled the air. Ryan, usually reserved, was in high spirits, laughing with friends over a plastic cup of soda. Lauren, wearing a faded denim skirt, hovered close, her smile tight. I stood by the cotton candy stand watching them, my good luck charm, a small silver cross from the local church, clutched in my pocket. I'd prayed for Ryan's success that morning, hoping he'd shine. But Lauren had other plans. As the festival wound, she slipped something into Ryan's drink when he wasn't looking. I didn't see it happen, but I noticed his unsteady steps, later his words slurring as he leaned into her. She guided him to a quiet corner of the quad, her arm around his waist, whispering promises of love. By morning, Ryan was a wreck, disoriented, unable to recall the night, and late for his interview. Unimpressed by his absence, the Global Scholars panel crossed his name off the list. The opportunity that could have changed his life was gone. I couldn't bear to see Ryan's dreams crumble, nor could I watch my parents' hopes for him, years of nurturing his talent, go to waste. Lauren's actions weren't just a betrayal of Ryan, but a slap to my family's kindness. Torn between loyalty to Ryan and outrage, I confided in my parents. My father's face hardened, his usual calm replaced by fury. She did what he demanded, slamming his coffee mug on the kitchen table. My mother, Linda, eyes wide with shock, clutched my hand. They called the Willow Creek police, who searched Lauren's apartment and found a vial of sedatives hidden in her purse. She was arrested that evening, her protest drowned out by the clink of handcuffs. The town buzzed with gossip. Lauren, humiliated by the public scandal, couldn't endure the judgment of neighbors who once smiled at her in the diner. Days after her release on bail, she was found in her apartment, having taken her own life. The news hit Ryan like a freight train. He sat in our living room, staring at the floor, his hands trembling. "Why didn't you talk to me, Emily?" he whispered, his voice thick with grief. I wanted to scream that I'd tried, that Lauren's scheming had left me no choice, but his pain silenced me. In that moment, I saw a flicker of his conflict, his love for Lauren warring with the ambition my family had nurtured. But he didn't see her manipulation, only my interference. Willow Creek mourned Lauren briefly, but Ryan's loss lingered. He threw himself into his studies, passed a makeup interview, and went abroad. When he returned a tech prodigy with a startup fortune, I thought he'd moved on, but his success masked a deeper wound. He blamed me for Lauren's death, believing I'd acted out of jealousy rather than care. That blame would fester, setting the stage for a betrayal that would shatter my family and lead to my rebirth. The years after Lauren Carter's arrest blurred into a cascade of triumphs for Ryan Foster, but they ended in darkness for my family. In my first life, Ryan had salvaged his chance with Global Scholars Inc. after the scandal acing a rescheduled interview and studying in London. He returned to Willow Creek in 1987, a tech prodigy at 21, founding a startup that revolutionized local manufacturing. His face graced the cover of the Willow Creek Gazette, hailed as the town's golden son. My parents, Dean and Linda Harper, beamed with pride, believing their years of fostering Ryan, paying for his books, clothes, and prep courses had paid off. I, Emily Harper, watched from the sidelines, my heart still bruised from his rejection, but hopeful he'd found his path. Yet beneath Ryan's success simmered a resentment I hadn't foreseen. He blamed me for Lauren's death, convinced I'd exposed her out of jealousy rather than concern. In his mind, I'd stolen his first love, the one person who understood his rural roots and shared his hunger to rise above Willow Creek's small-town limits. Lauren had been his mirror, ambitious, scrappy, and defiant of their humble beginnings. Ryan's pride, forged in the hardship of his abandoned childhood, couldn't accept that she'd manipulated him. Instead, he saw me as the villain, the privileged girl who'd meddled in his life. By 1990, Ryan's startup had made him a billionaire, synonymous with innovation. But wealth didn't soften his heart. It sharpened his vengeance. He colluded with shady investors, accusing my father's community college of monopolizing local education funds. The allegations were baseless, but Ryan's influence was unstoppable. He orchestrated a smear campaign spreading lies that Dean Harper had exploited students for profit. The college lost funding, and my father's reputation built over decades crumbled. Our family was evicted from our Maple Street home, forced into a rundown motel on the edge of town. My mother's health deteriorated, her gentle smile replaced by a hollow stare. The final blow came on a stormy night in an abandoned warehouse by the Hudson River. Ryan, his eyes cold with rage, confronted me. "Emily, you destroyed Lauren," he sneered, his hands closing around my throat. "Your family deserves to rot for what you did." His voice dripped with the pain of loss, but it was twisted by his refusal to see the truth. He assaulted me, leaving me broken in the rain-soaked dark. As my vision faded, I saw my parents' faces, their dreams for Ryan shattered alongside our lives. But in that moment of death, a blinding light enveloped me, a warmth that felt ancient divine. A soft yet commanding voice whispered, "You are given a second chance to right the wrongs of love and betrayal." I didn't understand its origin, whether God or some cosmic force, but it promised rebirth, a chance to rewrite my story. I awoke in my teenage bedroom, the familiar scent of lavender from my mother's candles filling the air. It was 1984 again, the morning after the spring festival when Lauren had sabotaged Ryan's interview. My heart raced as I touched the silver cross charm on my nightstand, which I'd clutched while praying for Ryan's success. I was 18, reborn, my memories of that tragic future intact. The weight of my past life's pain pressed against my chest, but with it came clarity. I saw Ryan for who he was, a boy whose brilliance was eclipsed by his selfishness, whose loyalty to Lauren stemmed from their shared defiance of a world that had once overlooked them. In my first life, I'd believed love meant saving him even at my own cost. Now I understand that some paths must be walked alone. Standing before my bedroom mirror, my reflection still soft with youth, I made a vow. I would not interfere with Ryan's choices. Let him chase Lauren, let him face the consequences of her schemes. My family had given him everything, shelter, education, love, but he'd repaid us with betrayal. This time, I'd protect my parents, myself, and the life we deserved. As I stepped outside, the Willow Creek sun was bright, the town buzzing with festival cleanup. Across the street, I saw Ryan's rival, Jake Carter, polishing his bike, a community award ribbon pinned to his jacket. His quiet confidence stood in stark contrast to Ryan's restless ambition. A neighbor called out, "Emily, you grew up with Ryan?" "Bet you're proud?" I smiled faintly, my heart steady. "He's on his path," I said, turning away. The town didn't know about Lauren's plot or Ryan's missed opportunity, but I did. And as I walked toward the community college where my father was preparing for another day, I felt the divine light's promise linger. This was my chance to let Ryan fall, to let his choices carve his fate, while I built a future free of his shadow. The weight of my past life's grief was heavy, but so was my resolve. Willow Creek would see Ryan Foster's true colors, and I would ensure my family's love was no longer squandered on an ungrateful heart. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of my bedroom in Willow Creek, casting soft patterns on the hardwood floor. In April 1984, mere hours after the Spring Festival, Lauren Carter had sabotaged Ryan Foster's chance at a Global Scholars Inc. study abroad program. I, Emily Harper, stood before my mirror, my 18-year-old face staring back untouched by the scars of my past life. The memories of Ryan's betrayal, his rise to wealth, his destruction of my family, and my death in that rain-soaked warehouse burned in my mind. Yet the divine light that had granted me the second chance lingered like a quiet pulse, urging me to choose differently. In my first life, I'd been naive, believing Ryan and I were bound by fate. Growing up, we'd shared countless moments, racing bikes down Maple Street, studying under the oak tree in our backyard, his laughter brightening even my gloomiest days. I'd mistaken our closeness for love, ignoring how his ambition, forged in the poverty of his rural childhood, made him restless, always chasing something beyond Willow Creek. He saw me as a sister, not a partner, his heart drawn to Lauren, who mirrored his hunger to escape their shared roots. My reborn clarity stripped away that illusion. Ryan's brilliance was real, but so was his selfishness, and I would no longer let it consume my family. I slipped the silver cross charm, my prayer for Ryan's success in my past life, into my pocket. It felt heavy, a reminder of my old mistakes. I vowed to let Ryan walk his path, even if it led to ruin. My parents, Dean and Linda Harper, had poured their hearts into fostering him, giving him a room in our home, the best education, and endless support. Yet he'd repaid us with betrayal, blaming me for Lauren's downfall. This time, I'd protect my family's love, keeping it for those who deserved it. Stepping outside, I breathed in the crisp spring air. Willow Creek bustled with post-festival cleanup vendors dismantling stalls, kids chasing balloons across the town square. At the corner of Main Street, I spotted Jake Carter, Ryan's rival at the community college's tech program. Jake, no relation to Lauren, was polishing his bike, a red ribbon from a recent community award pinned to his jacket. Unlike Ryan's restless swagger, his steady hands and quiet smile radiated a confidence that didn't need to prove itself. Jake had grown up in Willow Creek, his parents running a small hardware store, and his grounded nature made him a favorite among the townsfolk. Emily called Mrs. Thompson our neighbor as she swept festival confetti from her porch. "You must be thrilled about Ryan's big interview today. Growing up with a star like him, you're so lucky." Her words stung, echoing my past life's blind admiration. I forced a smile, my resolve hardening. "Ryan's got his path, Mrs. Thompson," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm just here to support my family." She raised an eyebrow, but I turned away, heading toward the community college where my father was likely preparing for Ryan's big day. Ryan's perspective weighed on me as I walked. In my past life, he'd been torn between Lauren's fierce loyalty and the opportunity my family offered. His rural upbringing, marked by hunger and abandonment, had left him with a chip on his shoulder. With her struggles, Lauren understood that in a way I never could. She fed his pride, whispering promises of a future where they'd rise together, while I, the privileged daughter of Dean Harper, seemed like a reminder of his dependence. His choice to trust her over me wasn't just love, it was a rebellion against feeling indebted. Knowing this, I felt pity, but it didn't sway my decision. Ryan's choices were his own, and I wouldn't save him from their consequences. At the college, students milled about, whispering about the Global Scholars interview. The town saw Ryan as their prodigy, the boy who'd put Willow Creek on the map. Their faith in him made my silence heavier. I knew he'd already missed the interview, likely tangled up with Lauren after her scheme. The community's expectations soon turned to disappointment, and I braced for the fallout. In his office, my father reviewed Ryan's application, his face alight with hope. "Emily, today's the day," he said, his voice warm. "Ryan's going to make us proud." I nodded, hiding my knowledge of what was to come. "I hope so, Dad," I replied, my heart tight. As I left his office, I passed the college's bulletin board where a flyer for the study abroad program hung. Jake Carter stood nearby, chatting with the professor, his award ribbon catching the light. Unlike Ryan, Jake didn't crave the spotlight yet. His steady work had earned him respect. I wondered if he'd take Ryan's place, which sparked relief and unease. Willow Creek's future rested on its young talents, and I sensed the town's rhythm shifting. My rebirth wasn't just about saving my family, it was about letting go of a boy who'd never truly been ours, and embracing a life where my choices mattered. The spring of 1984 felt like a lifetime ago, yet as I stood in my reborn present, the memories of my first life flooded back with aching clarity. Emily Harper, was 18 again, living in our cozy Maple Street home in Willow Creek, New York. The silver cross charm I'd clutched for Ryan Foster's success rested on my nightstand, a relic of my naive hope that he'd return my feelings. In my past life, I'd believed our shared childhood building snowmen in winter, sharing secrets under the stars, meant we were destined for more. But on my 18th birthday, that illusion shattered, and the pain of that day now guided my reborn resolve to let Ryan face his fate. In my first life, my birthday had fallen just before Ryan's big interview with Global Scholars, Inc. The town buzzed with pride for him, the foster kid turned prodigy who'd risen from a rural trailer park to Willow Creek Community College's star. My parents, Dean and Linda Harper, had poured their hearts into raising him, giving him a room, new clothes, and the best education. I'd watched him study late into the night, his focus fierce, driven by a need to prove he was more than his abandoned roots. I'd mistaken his gratitude for affection, my heart fluttering when he flashed his rare smile. Foolishly, I thought a simple gesture might bridge the gap between us. That birthday, I'd gathered my courage, my cheeks warm with nerves, and approached Ryan in the college library. He was hunched over a physics textbook, his dark hair falling into his eyes. "Ryan," I said, clutching my Polaroid camera, "can we take a photo together?" "For memories." His response was sharp, his voice edged with irritation. "Emily, I'm preparing for the interview. This isn't the time." My heart sank, but I nodded, retreating with a forced smile. My parents later scolded me for distracting them, focusing on their future and closing their eyes to my hurt. My mother had said, "You're acting childish, Emily," her tone gentle but firm. I felt small, my feelings dismissed. I surprised Ryan with a homemade sandwich that night, determined to make amends. I slipped out of our house, the spring air cool against my skin, and walked to the college dorms. The campus was quiet, the festival lanterns still hanging from the quad. As I neared Ryan's room, I froze. Through the window, I saw him with Lauren Carter, their hands intertwined, writing love notes on fancy stationery I'd never seen before. Bright with ambition, Lauren leaned close, whispering promises of a future together. Her faded sweater and worn sneakers betrayed her upbringing in a cramped apartment above a laundromat where she'd grown up watching her mother struggle and her brother Patrick scheme for easy money. To Lauren, Ryan was her escape, a ticket to a life beyond Willow Creek's limits. She fed his pride, mirroring his hunger to rise above their shared poverty, something I, the privileged daughter of Dean Harper, could never understand. My heart broke as I watched them, the sandwich forgotten in my hands. Ryan's laughter, so rare with me, echoed freely with her. I realized then that his heart belonged to Lauren, not because she was kinder, but because she shared his restlessness, his defiance of a world that had once overlooked them. In my past life, I'd buried that pain, convincing myself I could still save him. The next morning, I went to St. Mary's Church, clutching a silver cross charm, praying for his success in the Global Scholars interview. I'd hoped my quiet and steady love would somehow reach him, but Lauren's scheme, drugging his drink at the festival, had already set his downfall in motion. Now reborn, I stood in my bedroom, the memory of that night a sharp reminder of my folly. I saw Ryan's choice clearly. Lauren's fierce loyalty spoke to his insecurities, his fear of being defined by his past. He'd clung to her, not me, because she validated his struggle in a way my comfortable life couldn't. The town of Willow Creek, oblivious to the drama unfolding, still saw Ryan as their golden boy. At the diner that morning, Mrs. Jenkins, the owner, poured my coffee and gushed, "Ryan's going to make us proud, Emily. You're lucky to have grown up with him." I sipped my coffee, my smile tight. "He's got his journey," I said, my voice steady. The community's faith in him was a weight I no longer carried. As I walked to the college, the spring breeze carried the scent of blooming lilacs. My father was in his office reviewing Ryan's application, his pride palpable. I knew the truth. Ryan had missed the interview, tangled in Lauren's web. The pain of my past life's rejection lingered, but it fueled my resolve. I wouldn't chase Ryan's approval or save him from his choices. My family deserved better, and so did I. The silver cross stayed on my nightstand, a symbol of a love I'd let go, as I stepped into a future where my heart would no longer break for an ungrateful star. The morning of Ryan Foster's Global Scholars Inc. interview dawned bright in Willow Creek, New York, the spring air crisp with promise. It was April 1984, and I, Emily Harper, stood in my reborn life, my heart steeled by memories of betrayal. In my past life, this day had marked the beginning of Ryan's downfall, orchestrated by his girlfriend, Lauren Carter. Now, with the clarity of my second chance, I walked toward Willow Creek Community College, determined to let Ryan face the consequences of his choices. The silver cross charm I'd once clutched for his success stayed behind a relic of my naive devotion. As I crossed the college quad, the campus buzzed with anticipation. Students whispered about Ryan, the foster kid turned prodigy whose interview could put Willow Creek on the map. My father, Dean Harper, the college administrator, had pinned his hopes on Ryan, seeing him as a testament to his belief in second chances. Ryan's brilliance, honed by years of my family's support, had earned him this shot, but I knew Lauren's scheme from my past life. She'd drugged him at the spring festival, ensuring he'd miss the interview. Her motives were clear to me now. Raised in poverty above a laundromat, Lauren saw Ryan's potential as her escape from a life of struggle. She wasn't just in love, but desperate to keep him tethered to her world. Near the college's bike rack, I spotted Lauren and her brother Patrick Carter, their heads bent in hushed conversation. Patrick, a lanky drifter with a rap sheet of petty scams, was Lauren's accomplice in her bid for control. I ducked behind a tree, my pulse quickening as their words drifted over. "Will the drug work?" Lauren whispered, her voice taut with ambition. Her faded denim jacket hung loosely on her frame, a reminder of the poverty that fueled her envy. "It's foolproof," Patrick sneered, his beady eyes glinting. "Folks back home use this stuff to knock out anyone, no matter how strong. Ryan'll miss that interview and we'll be set. You marry him, sis, and we'll mooch off the Harper's wealth. That house on Maple Street's worth a fortune." My face burned with anger. Lauren wasn't just sabotaging Ryan. She was betting on my family's generosity to fund her future. Her plan was ruthless: keep Ryan in Willow Creek, marry into his foster family's stability, and drag Patrick along for the ride. I remembered Ryan's face from my past life, clouded with confusion after the festival, unaware of Lauren's betrayal. His pride, rooted in his abandoned childhood, made him vulnerable to her. She fed his defiance, promising a future where they'd rise together, free from the Harper's shadow. Ryan, desperate to prove he wasn't a charity case, clung to her loyalty, blind to her manipulation. I hurried to the dorms, my mind racing. In my past life, I'd rushed to warn Ryan, hoping to save him. I found him in his room, still groggy from Lauren's drug, his dark hair disheveled. "Emily, what's wrong?" he'd mumbled, rubbing his eyes. I'd poured out what I'd overheard, my voice trembling. "Lauren's plotting with Patrick. She drugged you to make you miss the interview," but Ryan's face had hardened, his pride wounded. "You're jealous, Emily," he'd snapped. "You can't stand that I love her, so you're making up lies. Lauren would never hurt me." His words had cut deep, his trust in Lauren, a girl who shared his hunger to escape their roots, trumping my warning. I'd stood there stunned as he turned away, choosing her over the truth. That rejection had pushed me to tell my parents, leading to Lauren's arrest and her tragic end. Ryan's resentment had grown from that moment, fueling his later betrayal. Now reborn, I hesitated outside his dorm. The urge to warn him surged, but I pushed it down. My family had given Ryan everything: shelter, education, love, but he'd repaid us with blame. Let him fall into Lauren's trap, I thought. Let him learn what her loyalty costs. I turned away, my sneakers crunching on the gravel path, and headed toward the college's main building. The town's faith in Ryan was palpable. Students chatted about his potential at the campus coffee shop, their voices bright with pride. "Ryan's gonna make it big," one said, sipping a latte. "Willow Creek's never seen anyone like him." I smiled faintly, knowing the truth they didn't. My father was preparing for Ryan's interview in his office, unaware of the disaster looming. I wanted to protect him from the heartbreak, but I knew this was Ryan's lesson to learn. Lauren's plot would unravel, and the community would see her for what she was. Lauren was gone as I passed the bike rack again, but her words echoed in my mind. This time I wouldn't intervene. Ryan's fate was his to forge, and I'd guard my family's heart from his inevitable betrayal. The spring sun hung low over Willow Creek, New York, casting long shadows across the community college quad. It was April 1984, and I, Emily Harper, stood in my reborn life, the weight of my past life's memories heavy in my chest. Lauren Carter's plot to sabotage Ryan Foster's Global Scholars Inc. interview in that first life had unraveled. Still, my attempt to save him sparked a betrayal chain that destroyed my family. Knowing Ryan's true colors, I'd vowed not to interfere. Yet the events of that fateful day in my past life replayed in my mind, warning me what would come if I acted again. In my first life, after overhearing Lauren and her brother Patrick's scheme to drug Ryan, I'd confronted him only to be met with accusations of jealousy. His words had stung, but I couldn't let his future, nor my parents' years of sacrifice, be ruined by Lauren's ambition. Lauren, raised in poverty, saw Ryan as her way out of Willow Creek's dead-end streets. She planned to keep him from studying abroad, tying him to her and the comfort of my family's wealth. Blinded by his pride and their shared hunger to rise above their roots, Ryan refused to see her deception. Desperate, I'd turned to my parents, Dean and Linda Harper, who'd fostered Ryan since he was 5. I found my father in his office at Willow Creek Community College, his desk piled with papers praising Ryan's brilliance. Dad, I'd said, my voice trembling, Lauren drugged Ryan at the festival to make him miss the interview. I overheard her and Patrick planning it. My father's face darkened, his usual calm replaced by fury. Drugged him, he roared, slamming a fist on the desk. My mother, standing nearby, gasped, her hand clutching mine. They called the Willow Creek police, who stormed Lauren's apartment above the laundromat. They found sedatives hidden in her purse, and she was arrested that evening, her protests echoing down Main Street. The town buzzed with shocked neighbors whispering outside the diner about the lovely girl turned schemer. Ryan, still groggy from the drug, sat in our living room, his hands shaking. "Why, Emily?" he whispered, his eyes clouded with grief. "Why would you do this to Lauren?" His voice carried a mix of pain and defiance, and his rural upbringing made him cling to Lauren's loyalty. She understood his struggle, abandoned by his parents, raised in a trailer park, while I, the privileged daughter of Dean Harper, seemed like an outsider. His pride, forged in hardship, couldn't accept that Lauren had betrayed him. To him, I was the one who'd shattered his world. He pulled himself together, despite his anger, aced a rescheduled Global Scholars interview, and went to London. 3 years later, in 1987, Ryan returned to Willow Creek as a tech prodigy. His startup, a pioneer in automated manufacturing, made him the town's first billionaire at 21. The Willow Creek Gazette ran headlines, "Local boy makes good." My parents beamed, believing their sacrifices, paying for Ryan's education clothes and dreams, had borne fruit. I too hoped he'd moved past Lauren's tragedy, but Ryan's success masked a festering wound. He blamed me for her arrest and suicide, convinced I'd acted out of spite. His resentment grew, fed by memories of Lauren's promises to build a life together free from the Harper's charity. By 1990, Ryan's vengeance struck. He colluded with shady investors, accusing my father's college of mismanaging funds. The lies spread like wildfire, amplified by Ryan's wealth and influence. The college lost its grants, and my father's reputation crumbled. We were evicted from our Maple Street home, forced into a motel on the town's outskirts. My mother's health faded, her spirit broken. One stormy night, in an abandoned warehouse by the Hudson River, Ryan confronted me. "You killed Lauren, Emily," he snarled, his hands tightening around my throat. "Your family pays for it." His eyes burned with pain, but his refusal to see Lauren's fault twisted it into cruelty. He left me broken, my family destroyed, as the divine light of rebirth enveloped me. Now reborn in 1984, I stood outside the college, the memory of that betrayal sharp. I had not warned Ryan this time, letting him fall into Lauren's trap. But the town's faith in him lingered. At the campus coffee shop, students chatted excitedly. "Ryan's interviews today," one said. "He's our ticket to the big leagues." The community's hope made my silence heavy. In his office, my father was still preparing for Ryan's success, unaware of the disaster unfolding. I knew Lauren's drug had worked. Ryan was likely with her now, missing his chance. The pain of my past life urged me to act, but I held firm. Ryan's choices and their consequences were his alone. Willow Creek would soon see the prodigy they adored for who he truly was, and I'd protect my family from the fallout. The spring of 1984 hung heavy with anticipation in Willow Creek, New York, as the town awaited news of Ryan Foster's Global Scholars Inc. interview. I, Emily Harper, stood in my reborn life, my heart anchored by the painful clarity of my past. In my first life, I'd tried to save Ryan from Lauren Carter's scheme, only to ignite his resentment, which later destroyed my family. Now reborn, I'd vowed to let him face his choices alone. The memory of his betrayal, his cold hands around my throat in that rain-soaked warehouse, kept my resolve firm. Today, as the college campus buzzed with hope for Ryan, I chose silence, protecting my family from his inevitable fall. My parents, Dean and Linda Harper, had raised Ryan like a son since he was 5, rescuing him from a rural trailer park where hunger and neglect defined his early years. My father, the community college administrator, saw Ryan's brilliance as a chance to prove that hard work could rewrite any story. He'd given Ryan books, clothes, and a room in our Maple Street home, nurturing his talent for physics and mechanics. My mother ensured he never went hungry. Her kitchen was always warm with his favorite meals. But Ryan's pride, forged in his abandoned childhood, made him restless. He saw their care as charity, a debt he resented, and Lauren, with her desperate roots, fed that defiance, promising a future where he owed no one. My father polished his old Ford that morning, ready to drive Ryan to the interview. His face glowed with pride, believing today would mark Ryan's ascent. I stood in our driveway, the spring breeze carrying the scent of lilacs, knowing Ryan was likely with Lauren, still reeling from her drug-induced scheme at the festival. In my past life, his absence had shattered my parents. Now I braced for their heartbreak, determined not to intervene. As my father checked his watch, my mother rushed out, her face pale. "Dean, something's wrong," she cried. "Ryan's gone. I've searched the house, the backyard, everywhere." My father froze, his hand gripping the car door. "Gone," he echoed, disbelief cracking his voice. I stepped forward, steadying him. "Dad, don't panic," I said, my tone calm. "Maybe he went to college early to prepare." But my heart knew the truth. Ryan was repeating his mistake with Lauren. My mother's eyes filled with tears, and my father staggered, his hope crumbling. "Emily, you're right," he murmured, patting my hand. "He must be there." He turned to our driver, John. "Check the campus, the library, and his friends' houses. Hurry." I watched John speed off the town's quiet streets, starkly contrasting to the storm brewing within me. Ryan's perspective haunted me. In my past life, he'd chosen Lauren because she understood his struggle, both born to nothing, both clawing for more. My family's support, meant as love, felt like a leash to him, a reminder of his dependence. Lauren's fierce loyalty, even if manipulative, spoke to his need to prove himself on his terms. I'd once thought I could save him with love, but now I saw his choice as a rebellion that would lead to his ruin. The community's faith in Ryan amplified the tension. At the Willow Creek diner, locals sipped coffee and chatted about his interview. "Ryan's our golden ticket," Mr. Larson, the hardware store owner, said, his voice proud. "He'll put this town on the map." Their words echoed the town's investment in him, a pressure Ryan craved and resented. I sipped my tea, my silence a shield. I knew Lauren's drug had worked. Ryan was missing, his chance tangled in her web. My parents' heartbreak loomed, but I couldn't shield them without risking the same betrayal as before. As noon approached, John returned, his face grim. "Mr. Harper," he whispered, "Ryan's not at the college. I heard he was seen with Lauren near the old mill." My father's jaw tightened, his hope replaced by dread. I stayed quiet, my reborn clarity guiding me. In my past life, I'd pushed my parents to act, leading to Lauren's arrest and Ryan's vengeance. Now I let the truth unfold on its own. The town's pride would soon turn to whispers of disappointment, and my family would face the fallout. But I stood firm, my heart no longer tethered to Ryan's fate. Willow Creek would see the prodigy they adored stumble, and I'd guard my family's love from his ungrateful heart, ready to face whatever came next. The spring sun climbed higher over Willow Creek, New York, its warmth doing little to ease the chill in my heart. It was April 1984, and I, Emily Harper, stood in my reborn life, resolute in letting Ryan Foster face the consequences of his choices. In my past life, my warning about Lauren Carter's plot to sabotage his Global Scholars Inc. interview had led to her arrest, and his bitter resentment culminating in my family's ruin. Now I'd chosen silence, letting Ryan miss his interview entangled with Lauren. The town's hope for their prodigy was about to shatter, and I braced for the fallout. My father, Dean Harper, had found Ryan at the old mill with Lauren, the truth of her scheme laid bare. His confrontation had been explosive in my past life, but I stayed out of it this time. My father returned home, his face ashen, and recounted the scene to my mother, Linda, and me. "I found him with Lauren," he said, his voice heavy. He admitted he was drunk and said he took advantage of her. I told him he'd been deceived, but he defended her and claimed her reputation matters more than the interview. My mother's eyes welled up, her hands trembling. "How could he throw it all away?" she whispered. My father's anger was palpable. "Ryan, you've betrayed everything we've given you," he'd told him, his voice breaking. Ryan's defiance, rooted in his rural upbringing, had flared. He saw Lauren as his equal, someone who understood his struggle against a world that had abandoned him. My family's support, our Maple Street home, his education, our love, felt like a debt he couldn't bear. Lauren fed his pride with her desperate roots, promising a future free from obligation. His choice to shield her, even at the cost of his dreams, was a rebellion against that perceived debt. The town, unaware of Ryan's failure, still buzzed with pride. At the Willow Creek diner, locals speculated about his interview. Ryan's hour shot at glory, Mrs. Jenkins said, pouring coffee. But whispers of his absence began to spread, and by afternoon the community college's quad was tense with rumors. My father, determined to salvage Ryan's future, sent colleagues to search for him, but I knew it was too late. The Global Scholars panel had left, and Ryan's chance was gone. Days later, the fallout reached a boiling point. Lauren's brother, Patrick Carter, a drifter known for his scams, stormed to our doorstep, drawing a crowd of curious neighbors. "Dean Harper raised a boy who ruined my sister," he shouted, his ragged jacket flapping as he gestured at our house. "Ryan was drunk, took advantage of Lauren, and now you're tossing him out like trash." His words were a calculated lie, painting Ryan as the villain to extort sympathy and money from us. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others skeptical. I stepped forward, my reborn resolve steadying me. "Let's talk this through," I said, my voice clear. Ryan was born in a trailer park abandoned by his parents. My father brought him to Willow Creek, gave him a home, education, everything. We never mistreated him, ask any neighbor. Jake Carter, Ryan's co-worker at the college's tech lab and no relation to Lauren, pushed through the crowd. "I've worked with Ryan," he said firmly. "He wore brand-name clothes, never looked starved. Patrick's lying to stir trouble." The crowd nodded their faith in my father's integrity, holding firm. Patrick's eyes narrowed, his plan unraveling. "Fine, but now Ryan's starting a family with Lauren. Don't you owe them a house, a future?" he sneered. I met his gaze, unflinching. Ryan chose to miss that interview for Lauren. He swore he'd support her himself. Why should we hand him anything if he wants to prove his strength? The crowd murmured in agreement, a few clapping. "What a waste," one said. "All that talent was thrown away for a girl." Patrick, sensing the tide turn, slipped away, his schemes exposed. He'd later face arrest for petty theft, his lies catching up with him. Standing silently nearby with Lauren, Ryan looked defeated, his defiance crumbling under the town's judgment. His choice of Lauren over opportunity had cost him Willow Creek's admiration, a loss that cut deeper than the missed interview. The community, once his cheerleader, now saw his flaws. I felt a pang of pity, but my heart stayed firm. My parents had given Ryan everything only for him to choose a path that would lead to ruin. As I returned to our house, Jake's steady presence beside me felt like a promise of a different future. Willow Creek would move on, and so would I, free from Ryan's shadow and ready to protect my family from his ungrateful heart. The spring of 1984 faded into a humid summer in Willow Creek, New York, and the town's once bright hopes for Ryan Foster dimmed like a flickering street lamp. I, Emily Harper, stood in my reborn life, my resolve to let Ryan face the consequences of his choices unshaken. In my past life, my intervention had saved his Global Scholars Inc. interview, but ignited his resentment, leading to my family's ruin. Having stayed silent as he missed the interview, entangled with Lauren Carter, I watched his downfall unfold. The community's pride in their prodigy had turned to whispers of disappointment, and I braced for the ripples to reach my family. Ryan's absence at the interview handed the study a broad slot to Jake Carter, his co-worker and rival, in the community college's tech lab. The college's bulletin board announcement drew a crowd of students and locals. I stood across the street at the Willow Creek diner, sipping iced tea with my friend Sarah Miller. Through the window, I saw Ryan and Lauren approaching. She was carrying a grocery basket, and his shoulders slumped. The crowd parted, and a student called Ryan said, "They're posting the results." "You're just in time." Ryan's face darkened, his eyes fixed on the ground, knowing he'd failed. The announcer declared that the Global Scholars placement for spring 1984 goes to Jake Carter. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some glancing at Ryan with pity, others with confusion. Jake, standing tall with his award ribbon, accepted congratulations, his calm demeanor starkly contrasting Ryan's restless ambition. Ryan and Jake often clashed in the tech lab, competing for top honors. For Ryan, losing to Jake was a bitter pill, his pride forged in a childhood of abandonment and poverty, unable to bear the comparison. Lauren touched his arm, her voice soft. Ryan, it's okay, she said, but his clenched fist betrayed his anger. Ryan's perspective weighed heavily on me. In my past life, he'd seen the Harper's support as a leash, a reminder of his dependence. Sharing his rural roots, Lauren had promised a future where he owed no one her loyalty, a mirror to his defiance. Now choosing her over the interview, he faced the cost of that choice. The town's admiration, once his fuel, had turned to judgment. Why not Ryan? A student muttered, shaking his head. What a waste. Ryan shook off a consoling hand and stormed away, Lauren trailing behind her grocery basket swinging. Weeks later, Ryan and Lauren moved into a rundown apartment near the town's edge, a far cry from our Maple Street home. Patrick Carter, Lauren's scheming brother, had sold Ryan's prized tech manuals books he'd once guarded fiercely for gambling money. I learned this from Sarah, who'd heard it from a neighbor. Patrick pawned them to some guy at the bar, she said, her eyes wide. Ryan's broke Emily. That apartment leaks when it rains. Ryan's brilliance, once Willow Creek's pride, was crumbling under Lauren's influence and Patrick's greed. Now dodging the law after his public lies about my family, Patrick would soon be arrested for theft and his schemes unraveled. The community felt the sting of Ryan's fall. At the diner, locals shook their heads. Mr. Larson, the hardware store owner, said Ryan had it all, threw it away for that Carter girl. The college's tech lab, once abuzz with Ryan's innovations, now celebrated Jake's steady progress. My father, Dean Harper, sat in his office, his face lined with disappointment. I thought Ryan was our legacy, he told me, his voice low. All those years wasted. I squeezed his hand, hiding my knowledge of Ryan's path. He made his choice, Dad, I said gently. We can't carry it for him. Ryan's decline was stark. Once sharp and confident, he now looked gaunt, his eyes hollow. Lauren's promises of a shared rise had led to a shared fall, their apartment a symbol of their missteps. I felt pity remembering the boy who'd built forts with me in our backyard. But my reborn clarity held firm. Ryan's pride had closed his eyes to Lauren's manipulation, and his choice to defy my family's support had set this course. Once a beacon, the town's faith in him now cast a shadow, and I knew more challenges lay ahead. As I walked home, the summer heat heavy, I steeled myself for the next chapter, determined to protect my family from Ryan's unraveling dreams. Summer turned to fall in Willow Creek, New York, painting the hills in shades of amber and crimson. It was 1984, and I, Emily Harper, stood in my reborn life, my heart lightened by the choice to let Ryan Foster face his ruin. In my past life, my efforts to save him from Lauren Carter's schemes had led to his resentment and my family's destruction. I felt free after watching him miss his Global Scholars Inc. interview and lose the town's admiration. Ryan's downfall was his own, and I was ready to embrace a future unburdened by his shadow. Ryan's decline had shifted Willow Creek's rhythm. The community college, once alive with praise for his brilliance, now celebrated Jake Carter, who'd won the study abroad slot. Jake, a steady presence in the tech lab, had earned respect with his quiet diligence, starkly contrasting with Ryan's restless ambition. Unlike Ryan, whose pride stemmed from overcoming a childhood of poverty and abandonment, Jake carried no chip on his shoulder. His parents' hardware store on Main Street had given him stability, and his kindness drew people in. I'd noticed him more lately, his warm smile, his thoughtful questions about my day. He saw me as an equal, not a foster sister or a rival. Jake found me at the college library one crisp October evening where I was studying for my business classes. Emily, he said, his voice soft, I've been meaning to talk to you. He hesitated, then handed me a small daisy from the campus garden. I admire you, your strength, your heart. Would you consider going out with me? His sincerity caught me off guard, a warmth spreading through me. Ryan had blinded me in my past life, but now I saw Jake's steady goodness. Yes, I replied, smiling. I'd like that. Our courtship was swift, grounded in mutual respect. My mother, Linda, who'd once pinned her hopes on Ryan, saw her mistake. I was wrong, Emily, she said one night, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. I thought you and Ryan were meant to be, but I should have asked what you wanted. She squeezed my hand, her eyes soft. Jake's a good man. Honest, dependable, and now with that study abroad chance, he's going places. My father, Dean, nodded, his pride in Jake evident. He's got a solid heart, he said. That's rare. The town buzzed with approval. At the Willow Creek diner, Mrs. Jenkins winked as she served me pie. Jake Carter's a catch, Emily. You're a lucky girl. I smiled, the community's warmth a balm after months of tension over Ryan's failure. Jake's success in the tech lab and his upcoming trip to London made him Willow Creek's new star, a shift that stung Ryan, who'd once held that title. His perspective haunted me. His pride, rooted in a trailer park childhood, had driven him to Lauren, who promised a future free from the Harper's charity. Now living in a leaky apartment with her, his dreams were unraveling, his brilliance dimmed by her brother Patrick's schemes. My wedding day arrived in early 1985, a bright January morning filled with firecrackers and church bells. I wore a simple white dress, a red bridal hat perched on my head, a nod to my mother's traditions. Jake, beaming, slipped a piece of chocolate into my hand as I stepped into the wedding car. "Something sweet for my sweetheart," he whispered, his eyes warm. The town lined Maple Street, cheering as we passed their joy, a testament to Jake's place in their hearts. But as the car turned onto Main Street, it slowed, blocked by a rickety bicycle pulling a shabby wedding palanquin. It was Ryan and Lauren's wedding procession, in contrast to mine. Ryan looked gaunt in a wrinkled groom's suit, his once sharp features dulled by hardship. Lauren wore a patched dress beside him, her face tight with strain. Their palanquin, barely held together, lacked the flowers and ribbons of a proper celebration. The town watched, some whispering, others turning away. Ryan's eyes met mine through the car window, a flicker of pain crossing his face. I lowered the curtain, my heart steady. His choice of Lauren had led him here to a life of struggle, while I'd chosen Jake and a future of love. I felt a pang for the boy I'd once known, who'd laughed with me in our backyard. But Ryan's pride had closed his eyes to Lauren's manipulation, and his defiance of my family's support had sealed his fate. Willow Creek, once his champion, now saw him as a cautionary tale. As our car moved on, the crowd's cheers for Jake and me drowned the memory of Ryan's gaze. I leaned against Jake, the chocolate melting on my tongue, and knew I'd chosen right. My new beginning was here with a man who valued me, in a town ready to move forward without its fallen star. Winter's chill settled over Willow Creek, New York in early 1985, blanketing the town in frost and quiet. I, Emily Harper, stood in my reborn life, newly married to Jake Carter, my heart anchored by a love that felt like home. In my past life, my attempts to save Ryan Foster from Lauren Carter's schemes had led to his resentment and my family's ruin. Now, having let him miss his Global Scholars Inc. interview, I'd watched him spiral into poverty with Lauren, their dreams crumbling under her brother Patrick's greed. As I built a new life with Jake, Ryan's desperation was about to test my resolve. Ryan's downfall had reshaped Willow Creek's view of him. Once the town's prodigy, he was now a cautionary tale, his brilliance dimmed by his choice to stay with Lauren. Jake, who'd won the study abroad slot, was the new star, and his steady work in the community college's tech lab earned him cheers at our wedding. Ryan's perspective haunted me. His pride, forged in a childhood of abandonment in a rural trailer park, had driven him to Lauren. She'd promised a future free from the Harper's charity, a rebellion against the support my parents, Dean and Linda, had given him, our Maple Street home, his education, their love. But her manipulation and Patrick's theft of Ryan's tech manuals had left him broken. Months after our wedding, Ryan and a pregnant Lauren appeared at our doorstep, their faces gaunt. Ryan's once sharp features bore a jagged scar from a beating by Patrick, who'd been arrested for theft days earlier, his schemes finally catching up. Lauren, her belly swollen, clutched Ryan's arm, her eyes pleading. "Emily," Ryan said, his voice cracking, "please talk to Dean. Let us come back." I wouldn't have rebelled and missed the interview if he had been so strict. His words shifted blame, refusing to own his choice. Lauren added, "We're family now, Emily. The baby will call you Auntie." Her tone was manipulative, leveraging the child to guilt me. I stood firm, my reborn clarity unwavering. "You chose Lauren Ryan," I said coolly. "You said her love was enough. We're not your family anymore." The town, watching from their porches, whispered. "Ryan's got nerve," one neighbor muttered, "after all the Harpers did." The community's faith in my father's integrity was held, and their judgment of Ryan was sharp. Ryan's eyes flashed with resentment, his pride stinging. He'd always seen our support as a debt, and now facing hardship, he clung to the idea that we owed him salvation. Lauren, desperate, pressed on. "Emily, our child deserves a chance. You can't turn us away." But as she spoke, Ryan's frustration boiled over. "You ruined me, Lauren," he shouted, his scarred face twisting. He grabbed her shoulders, shaking her violently. "If you hadn't drugged me, I'd be in London now." His rage, a mirror of the cruelty he'd shown me in my past life, chilled me. Lauren screamed, clutching her belly as blood stained her dress, signaling early labor. The crowd gasped, some stepping back, others frozen. Jake, standing beside me, whispered, "Should we let them in?" I shook my head, my heart racing, but resolute. Letting them inside risked Ryan blaming us if anything went wrong, just as he'd blamed me for Lauren's death before. The pharmacy across the street has a midwife, I said firmly. Take her there. It's faster. Ryan panicked and lifted Lauren, his anger giving way to fear. Help, Emily, he pleaded, but I held my ground. You made this mess, Ryan, I said. Please fix it. As they stumbled across the street, the town's whispers grew louder. Ryan's lost it, Mrs. Thompson said, shaking her head. Poor girl, but she brought it on herself. The community's pity for Ryan had faded, replaced by disdain for his choices. Patrick's arrest had already tarnished the Carter name, and now Ryan's violence sealed his fall. I turned back to our house, Jake's hand steady on mine. In my past life, I'd softened trying to save Ryan only to lose everything. Now I saw his desperation for what it was, a refusal to face his failures. The pharmacy's lights glowed as the midwife rushed to help Lauren. Ryan's shouts echoed a mix of fear and regret. I knew this moment would haunt him just as his betrayal had haunted me. Willow Creek, once his champion, now saw him as a tragedy, their faith in my family unshaken. As I closed the door, I felt the weight of my reborn choice. Letting Ryan face his consequences was my strength, not my weakness. The winter wind howled, but with Jake and my family inside, I was warm, ready for whatever came next. Winter's grip tightened on Willow Creek, New York in early 1985. The snow falling softly as I, Emily Harper, stood in my reborn life, my heart anchored by love and resolve. My marriage to Jake Carter marked a new beginning, a stark contrast to the tragedy of my past life where Ryan Foster's resentment had destroyed my family. Having let Ryan face the consequences of choosing Lauren Carter over his Global Scholars Inc. opportunity, I'd watched him spiral into poverty and desperation. Now, as the town's faith in him faded, I braced for the final chapter of his story, determined to protect my family from his shadow. Days after Ryan and Lauren's desperate plea at our doorstep, news reached us like a cold wind. Lauren had given birth to a daughter in the pharmacy's back room, aided by the midwife, but Ryan, overwhelmed by his failures, had taken his own life. The messenger, a neighbor named Mr. Larson, stood in our living room, his face grim. Ryan hanged himself. Dean, he said, his voice low, found him in their apartment. My father, Dean Harper, aged a decade in that moment, his shoulders slumping. My mother, Linda, clutched his hand, tears welling. Did he say anything, my father asked. Mr. Larson hesitated. He rambled the night before, saying he dreamed he would go abroad and become a tech mogul. Kept saying this life wasn't real. I froze, my reborn memories stirring. In my past life, Ryan had achieved that dream only to turn it against us. Now, perhaps haunted by visions of that alternate life, he'd crumbled under the weight of his choices. His pride, forged in a childhood of abandonment in a rural trailer park, had driven him to Lauren, who promised a future free from the Harper's charity. But her manipulation and her brother Patrick's greed, he'd sold Ryan's tech manuals and was now jailed for theft, had left him with nothing. Ryan's refusal to own his decisions and blaming everyone but himself led to this tragic end. Willow Creek reeled from the news. Once proud of Ryan's brilliance, the community college held a somber assembly. He had so much potential, a professor said, shaking his head. Students whispered in the halls, their admiration replaced by pity and unease. The town's faith in my father took a hit. Some questioned why he'd fostered a boy who'd fallen so far. Mrs. Jenkins said Dean Harper meant well at the diner, but maybe he gave Ryan too much. The gossip stung, but my father's integrity held firm, bolstered by Jake's rising star in the tech lab. The community's focus shifted to Jake, whose study abroad plans promised to restore Willow Creek's pride. Ryan's perspective lingered in my mind. He'd seen our support as a debt, his pride, unable to accept help from a family he viewed as privileged. Lauren's loyalty, though manipulative, had spoken to his need to prove himself on his terms. His final act, ending his life, reflected a man who couldn't reconcile his dreams with his reality. I felt sorrow for the boy I'd once known, who'd laughed with me in our Maple Street backyard. But my reborn clarity kept me grounded. Sympathy couldn't erase the pain he'd caused in my past life, nor the choices he'd made in this one. As snow fell outside our home, Jake took my hand, tucking it into his coat pocket to warm it. "You're going to be a mother, Emily," he said, his eyes lighting up. "Don't catch a cold." I laughed, leaning into him. "I'm not a child, Jake," I teased. "I'm the mother of our child." He lifted me off the ground, his joy infectious. He said, "You're the best gift I've ever had," spinning me gently. I rested against his chest, the snowflakes swirling around us. With Jake, my parents, and our unborn child, I'd found a happiness I'd never known in my past life. Willow Creek moved on the whispers about Ryan fading like the snow. Lauren and her daughter survived, but their path was their own. Patrick was a footnote in the town's memory locked away for his crimes. My father, though shaken, found solace in Jake's promise and our growing family. I stood by our window watching the snow blanket Maple Street and reflected on my rebirth. The divine light that had given me this chance had taught me a truth: good intentions can't save those who choose their ruin. Ryan's story was a lesson etched in pain and loss, but mine was one of redemption built on love and the strength to let go.